Claire Morgan stood behind the marble reception desk of the Sterling Grand Hotel, her smile professionally frozen in place as she checked in another wealthy guest. The crystal chandelier overhead cast dancing lights across the lobby's polished floors, but Claire barely noticed the beauty surrounding her. Her mind was 3 miles away, in a small apartment where her 5-year-old daughter Sophie lay sleeping, her tiny chest rising and falling with the irregular rhythm that terrified Claire every single day. The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m., another hour until her break. Another hour of pretending her world was not crumbling beneath her feet. Claire's fingers trembled slightly as she typed guest information into the computer system, hoping no one would notice the exhaustion carved into every line of her face. A mother's silent scream. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Claire glanced at her supervisor, Mr. Patterson, who was busy organizing paperwork in his office before quickly checking the message. It was from Mrs. Henderson, her elderly neighbor who watched Sophie during night shifts. Sophie's lips looking blue again. "Should I call doctor?" Claire's heart dropped into her stomach. She typed back quickly, her hands shaking so badly she had to retype the message twice. "Give her the oxygen. I'll call Dr. Cole in morning. Please stay with her." She closed her eyes briefly, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. The oxygen concentrator at home was a temporary solution, a Band-Aid on a wound that needed surgery. Major surgery, life-saving surgery that cost $250,000, a number so impossibly large that Claire had stopped trying to imagine how she could ever afford it. The impossible number 3 months ago, Dr. Patricia Cole, the cardiac specialist at Boston Children's Hospital, had delivered the news with gentle but firm clarity. Sophie had a severe congenital heart defect that had worsened over time. Without surgery within the next 6 months, her daughter would not live to see her 6th birthday. Claire had applied for medical assistance programs, started 3 different fundraisers online, taken on extra shifts at the hotel, and sold everything of value she owned. She had raised $8,000. $8,000 against $250,000. The number mocked her every time she checked her savings account. Her ex-husband Tom had disappeared 2 years ago, leaving behind only debt and broken promises. No family to turn to, no trust fund, no miracle solution. Just Claire, her minimum wage job, and a ticking clock that grew louder every day. A foolish hope Claire pulled out a blank guest information card from beneath the desk. Her hand moved almost without conscious thought, grabbing a pen and writing 3 words in the corner. "Please don't tell." She stared at those words, feeling foolish and desperate at the same time. What was she even asking for? Help from strangers? Mercy from the universe? It was ridiculous. No one who stayed at the Sterling Grand would care about a struggling receptionist's problems. These were people who spent more on a single night stay than Claire made in a month, but desperation made people do ridiculous things. The penthouse guest. "Excuse me? I have a reservation." The voice pulled Claire from her thoughts. She quickly tucked the card with her note beneath a stack of folders and looked up, finding herself face to face with a man who seemed to command the space around him without effort. He was tall, probably in his late 30s, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples and eyes the color of storm clouds. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to having doors opened before he reached them. "Welcome to the Sterling Grand," Claire said, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Name, please?" "Vincent Hart. I have the penthouse suite reserved for 2 weeks." Claire's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up his reservation. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw the nightly rate. $15,000 per night. This man was spending more on accommodation than she needed to save her daughter's life. The bitter irony was not lost on her. The accidental discovery. Everything appears to be in order. "Mr. Hart?" Claire said, preparing his key cards. "You're in suite 3000. Our concierge will escort you to your room and explain all the amenities. If you need anything during your stay, please don't hesitate to call the front desk." As she gathered his welcome packet, her hand accidentally knocked over the stack of folders where she had hidden her note. Papers scattered across the desk, and the small card with "Please don't tell" written on it landed face up directly in front of Vincent Hart. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Vincent's gray eyes focused on the card, then slowly lifted to meet Claire's gaze. She felt heat rise to her cheeks, embarrassment and fear flooding through her system. She reached for the card, but Vincent was faster, his hand covering it gently. "This fell from your desk," he said quietly, his voice holding no judgment, only curiosity. "Is this meant for someone?" Claire's throat closed up. She could not speak, could not explain, could barely breathe. This was it. She would be fired for unprofessional behavior, for trying to solicit help from guests. Mr. Patterson would hear about this, and she would lose the one job keeping a roof over Sophie's head. An unexpected question, but Vincent did not call for the manager. Instead, he picked up the card and held it carefully, as though it were something precious rather than a foolish woman's desperate plea. "Please don't tell what?" he asked, his voice lower now, almost gentle. "What is it you're afraid of someone knowing?" Claire opened her mouth to lie, to brush it off as nothing, to protect herself the way she had learned to do. But something in his eyes stopped her. There was no mockery there, no cold dismissal. Just genuine concern from a complete stranger. "I need help," she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. "My daughter is dying, and I cannot save her." When everything collapses, Vincent's expression shifted, something painful flickering across his features before he could mask it. He was about to speak when Claire's phone rang loudly, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen and her blood turned to ice. Mrs. Henderson. Calling. Not texting, Claire answered with trembling hands, forgetting protocol, forgetting the guest standing before her, forgetting everything except the terror rising in her chest. "Mrs. Henderson? What's wrong?" "Claire, sweetheart, I called 911. Sophie stopped breathing. The ambulance is here now. They're taking her to Boston Children's Hospital. You need to come right now." The phone slipped from Claire's nerveless fingers, clattering onto the marble desk. The world tilted sideways, and she gripped the edge of the counter to keep from falling. Sophie. Her baby. Her little girl who loved butterflies and chocolate milk and bedtime stories. The child who had fought so hard to stay alive, whose smile could light up the darkest days. "I have to go," Claire heard herself say, though her voice sounded distant, disconnected. "I have to go right now." She grabbed her purse from beneath the desk, not caring about Mr. Patterson, not caring about her job, not caring about anything except reaching her daughter. She stumbled toward the lobby doors, her vision blurring with tears. An unexpected hand, a firm hand, caught her elbow, steadying her before she could fall. Vincent Hart's gray eyes were intense, focused, as he looked at her. "My car is outside," he said, his voice commanding but not unkind. "I'll drive you. It will be faster than waiting for a taxi." Claire stared at him, unable to process why this stranger would help her. But there was no time for questions, no time for pride or suspicion. "Please," she whispered. And that single word contained all her fear, all her desperation, all her hope. Vincent nodded once, keeping his hand on her elbow as he guided her through the hotel's revolving doors into the cold November night, where a sleek black car waited at the curb, ready to race toward whatever fate awaited them at the hospital. The city lights blurred past the car windows as Vincent's driver navigated through Boston's late-night streets with practiced efficiency. Claire sat in the passenger seat, her hands twisted together so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Every second felt like an eternity. Every red light was a personal enemy. Vincent sat beside her in the back seat, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low, urgent tones that Claire barely registered. Her entire focus was on the hospital that seemed impossibly far away, on Sophie's small face, on the terrifying image of her daughter struggling to breathe. "How old is she?" Vincent asked suddenly, ending his call and turning to Claire. 5. She'll be 6 in January." Claire's voice cracked on the words. "If she makes it to January." Vincent's jaw tightened, but he said nothing for a moment. Then he leaned forward slightly. "What's her condition exactly?" Claire wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary stenosis. It's a heart defect. She was born with it, but it's gotten worse. She needs open-heart surgery to repair 4 different problems in her heart. Without it, the doctors say she has maybe 4 months left. The words tasted like poison in her mouth. 4 months, 16 weeks, 120 days to watch her daughter slowly fade away because Claire could not afford to save her. The hospital entrance, the car pulled up to the emergency entrance of Boston Children's Hospital 13 minutes after leaving the hotel. Claire was out of the vehicle before it fully stopped, running toward the sliding glass doors with Vincent close behind her. The emergency room was a chaos of sound and movement. Crying children, worried parents, medical staff rushing between rooms. Claire ran to the reception desk, nearly colliding with a nurse carrying a clipboard. "My daughter, Sophie Morgan. She came in by ambulance." "Where is she?" The nurse checked her computer screen. "Sophie Morgan, 5 years old, cardiac emergency. She's in treatment room 7. Follow the blue line on the floor, take the second left." Claire did not wait to hear more. She ran down the corridor, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Behind her, Vincent followed at a steady pace, his presence somehow both comforting and confusing. A mother's worst fear, treatment room 7 was a flurry of activity. Doctors and nurses surrounded a small bed where Sophie lay, her tiny body nearly hidden beneath medical equipment. An oxygen mask covered her face. Wires connected her to monitors that beeped with urgent rhythm. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale as moonlight. "Sophie!" Claire tried to rush to her daughter's side, but a nurse gently but firmly held her back. "Mrs. Morgan, please let the doctors work. They're stabilizing her now." "I'm not Mrs., I'm Ms., and that's my baby," Claire said, her voice rising with panic. "What's happening? Is she going to be okay?" A tall woman in a white coat turned from Sophie's bedside. Dr. Patricia Cole, Sophie's cardiologist, looked at Claire with professional sympathy that did nothing to ease the terror clawing at Claire's insides. Claire, Sophie had a severe hypoxic episode. Her oxygen levels dropped dangerously low. "We're giving her oxygen and medication to stabilize her heart rhythm. She's fighting, and we're doing everything we can." "Can I hold her hand?" "Please, I just need to touch her." Dr. Cole nodded, stepping aside to make room. Claire moved to Sophie's bedside with trembling steps. Her daughter's small hand felt cool and fragile beneath her own. Claire brought it to her lips, kissing each tiny finger. "I'm here, baby girl," she whispered. "Mommy's here." "You're so strong, Sophie. So strong. Just keep fighting, okay? Keep fighting for me." A powerful Vincent Hart stood in the doorway of treatment room 7, watching the scene unfold with an expression that might have been carved from stone. But his hands were clenched at his sides, and his jaw worked as though he were fighting some internal battle. He stepped back into the corridor and made another phone call, this one even more urgent than the last. "Patricia, it's Vincent Hart. I need you to listen carefully. There's a 5-year-old girl in your emergency room right now, Sophie Morgan, tetralogy of Fallow. She needs surgery that her mother cannot afford." He paused, listening. "I don't care what the schedule looks like. I don't care what it costs. This child gets the best cardiac surgeon you have, the best surgical team, everything. Bill it to the Heart Foundation." "Yes, immediately. And Patricia, one more thing. I need your word that this family will never see a medical bill from this hospital. Not now, not ever." He ended the call and stood there for a moment, staring at nothing, his chest rising and falling with deep breaths, as though he were fighting for air himself. Painful memories. 20 minutes later, Sophie's condition had stabilized enough that the medical team stepped back, giving Claire space to be near her daughter. Sophie's eyes fluttered open briefly, focusing with difficulty on her mother's face. "Mama," she whispered behind the oxygen mask, the single word weak but present. "I'm right here, sweetheart. Right here." Claire stroked Sophie's hair with infinite gentleness. "You're in the hospital, but the doctors are taking good care of you. You're going to be okay." She hoped with everything in her that it was not another lie. Dr. Cole appeared at Claire's side. "We need to talk about next steps. Sophie's episode tonight was a warning. Her heart is failing faster than we anticipated. She needs surgery within the next 2 weeks, not months." Claire's stomach dropped. "I don't have the money. I've tried everything, and I only have $8,000. I need more time to raise funds." Actually, Dr. Cole said slowly, glancing toward the doorway where Vincent stood, that won't be necessary. The Hart Foundation has agreed to cover all medical expenses related to Sophie's care. Surgery, hospital stay, medications, follow-up care, everything. Claire turned to stare at Vincent, confusion and disbelief warring across her face. What? I don't understand. Why would you do that? A broken heart remembered. Vincent stepped into the room, his hands in his pockets, his gray eyes fixed on Sophie's small form on the hospital bed. 8 years ago, he began, his voice quiet but steady. I had a little sister named Emma. She was 15 years younger than me. An unexpected blessing, my parents called her. She had the same condition as your daughter. Claire listened, her hand still holding Sophie's, as Vincent continued. I was 22 when Emma was born. I had just started my first company, working 100-hour weeks trying to build something from nothing. By the time Emma was diagnosed at age 3, I was doing well financially, but not wealthy. Not yet. My parents worked 3 jobs between them, trying to afford her medications, her doctor visits. Vincent's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Claire thought he might not continue. But then he took a breath and went on. Emma needed the same surgery Sophie needs. We were on a waiting list, saving money, trying to get enough together. I told myself that once my next business deal closed, we'd have enough. Just one more deal, one more investment, one more month. But Emma didn't have one more month. The silence in the room was heavy with grief. She died 3 weeks before her 7th birthday, the night before my first $1 million deal was finalized. I had the money to save her one day too late. Understanding Dawn's Claire felt tears streaming down her face, but they were not just tears of fear anymore. They were tears of understanding, of shared pain, of recognition. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Vincent shook his head. After Emma died, I made myself a promise. I would never let another family go through what mine did. I would never let another child die because their parents were counting pennies while I was counting millions. That's why I started the Hart Foundation. We help families with children who have life-threatening conditions but cannot afford treatment. He finally looked directly at Claire. When I saw your note tonight, something told me to pay attention. I don't believe in fate or destiny, but I believe in second chances. I couldn't save Emma, but I can help save Sophie. Please let me do this. Claire looked down at her daughter's sleeping face, then back at this stranger who was offering them salvation. Pride warred with desperation, independence with need. But as she watched Sophie's chest rise and fall with labored breaths, Claire knew there was only one answer she could give. Thank you, she whispered. The words inadequate for the magnitude of what Vincent was offering. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it, but thank you. I'll find a way to pay you back. Somehow, someday, I promise I will. A new agreement. Vincent moved closer to Sophie's bedside, looking down at the small girl with an expression of such tenderness that Claire's heart ached. You don't need to pay me back, he said softly. But I do have one condition. Claire stiffened slightly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. There was always a catch, always strings attached. I want to be here, Vincent continued. Through her surgery, through her recovery. I want to see this through to the end. I need to see her get better. Can you give me that? It was such an unexpected request that Claire did not know how to respond. This powerful man was not asking for money or favors or anything tangible. He was asking for the simple right to witness a miracle he had been denied with his own sister. Yes, Claire said finally. Yes, you can be here. For as long as you want. Vincent nodded once, a ghost of relief crossing his features. Then he reached out and gently touched Sophie's small hand, just for a moment before stepping back. In that gesture, Claire saw the ghost of another little girl, another hospital room, another chance that came too late. And she understood that Vincent Hart was not just saving Sophie's life tonight. He was trying to save a piece of his own broken heart. 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and fear. Sophie's surgery was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late November, just as the first snow began to fall over Boston. Claire had barely slept the night before, spending hours at Sophie's bedside, memorizing every detail of her daughter's face as though she might never see it again. Vincent had been true to his word. He visited the hospital every single day, sometimes staying for hours, sometimes just stopping by for a few minutes between meetings. He brought Sophie coloring books and stuffed animals, told her stories about his travels around the world, and somehow made the frightened little girl smile even in the midst of her fear. Now, as the surgical team prepared to take Sophie into the operating room, Claire held her daughter's hand with a grip that refused to let go. "Mama, will it hurt?" Sophie asked, her voice small and scared behind the pre-surgery mask. Claire brushed a curl from Sophie's forehead, forcing her voice to remain steady. "You'll be asleep the whole time, sweetheart. You won't feel anything. And when you wake up, your heart will be all fixed. You'll be able to run and play without getting tired. Doesn't that sound wonderful?" Sophie nodded, but her lower lip trembled. "Will you be here when I wake up?" "I will never leave you," Claire promised, kissing her daughter's forehead. "I'll be right here waiting. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. I love you more than all the butterflies in the world," Sophie whispered back, their special phrase. As the surgical team began to wheel Sophie toward the operating room doors, Vincent stepped forward and placed a small object in Sophie's hand. It was a smooth, polished stone, deep blue with swirls of white. "This is a lucky stone," Vincent told her gently. "I've carried it with me since I was young, and it's always kept me safe. Now I want you to have it. Hold it tight, and it will help you be brave." Sophie's small fingers closed around the stone, and she gave Vincent a trusting smile that nearly broke his composure. "Thank you, Mr. Vincent," she said, and then the doors swung closed, taking her away from Claire's sight. The longest hours. The surgery was expected to take 6 hours. Claire sat in the waiting room, staring at the clock on the wall as each minute crawled by with agonizing slowness. She could not eat, could not read, could barely breathe. Every worst-case scenario played through her mind on endless repeat. Vincent sat beside her, steady and solid. He did not offer empty reassurances or meaningless platitudes. He simply stayed, his presence a quiet anchor in the storm of Claire's fear. "Tell me about Emma," Claire said suddenly, needing distraction, needing to think about anything other than what was happening behind those surgical doors. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, and Claire thought he might not answer. But then he began to speak, his voice soft with memory. She was fearless. Even when she was sick, even when she was tired and could barely walk across a room, she had this spirit that nothing could dim. She loved horses, even though she could never ride one. She collected pictures of them, dreamed about having a farm someday where she could take care of rescued animals. Vincent's voice caught, and he cleared his throat before continuing. "The day before she died, she made me promise something. She said that when I became rich and successful, I had to help other kids like her. She made me swear I wouldn't forget. And you didn't," Claire said softly. "I couldn't. Every child I help through the foundation, every family we support, I see her. I see the child she could have been if I had been faster, smarter, better at what I did." Claire reached over and took Vincent's hand, surprising them both. "You were 22 years old. You did everything you could. Emma knew that. That's why she made you promise to help others, not to blame yourself forever." Vincent looked down at their joined hands, and something shifted in his expression. "How did you get so wise?" "Single motherhood," Claire said with a small, sad smile. "It teaches you that sometimes doing your best is all you can do, even when it doesn't feel like enough." 6 hours and 43 minutes after Sophie went into surgery, Dr. Cole emerged through the waiting room doors, still in her surgical scrubs. Claire jumped to her feet, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might explode. "She did beautifully," Dr. Cole said, and Claire's knees nearly buckled with relief. Vincent's hand on her elbow steadied her. "The surgery was successful. We repaired all 4 defects. Her heart is functioning normally. She's in recovery now, and you can see her in about 30 minutes. Claire burst into tears, all the fear and tension of the past weeks pouring out in great, heaving sobs. She felt Vincent's arms go around her, holding her up as she fell apart with relief and gratitude and overwhelming joy. "Thank you," she gasped between sobs. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." When she finally pulled herself together and looked up at Vincent, she saw that his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "She made it," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Your little girl made it, Days of recovery. Sophie's recovery was slow but steady. The first few days were difficult, with pain and confusion and the frustration of a 5-year-old who did not understand why she could not get out of bed and play. But gradually, color returned to her cheeks. Her breathing became easier. Her energy started to return. Vincent came every single day without fail. He brought books and games, sat by Sophie's bedside reading stories about princesses and dragons, played endless games of Go Fish and Candyland. He treated Sophie with a gentle patience that made Claire's heart ache. And somewhere in those quiet hospital days, between watching Vincent make her daughter laugh and seeing the way his face lit up when Sophie showed him a drawing she had made, Claire realized something terrifying and wonderful. She was falling in love with Vincent Hart. It was not just gratitude, though she was grateful beyond measure. It was not just admiration for his generosity, though she admired him deeply. It was something more, something that grew in the spaces between their conversations, in the comfortable silences they shared, in the way he looked at her when he thought she was not watching. 3 weeks after Sophie's surgery, as they prepared for her discharge from the hospital, Vincent approached Claire with an unexpected proposition. "The Hart Foundation needs someone to coordinate with families we help," he said, leaning against the doorframe of Sophie's hospital room while the little girl napped peacefully. "Someone who understands what they're going through, who can advocate for them, help them navigate the medical and financial systems." "I think you would be perfect for the position." Claire stared at him. "Vincent, I don't have any experience in that kind of work. I'm a hotel receptionist. You're a mother who fought impossible odds to save her child. You're smart, compassionate, and you understand what these families need because you've lived it. That's worth more than any degree or resume." He paused. "The salary would be enough to support you and Sophie comfortably. Health insurance included, of course. And the hours would be flexible so you can be there for Sophie whenever she needs you." Claire's eyes filled with tears for what felt like the 1,000th time in recent weeks. "Why are you doing all this for us?" Vincent met her gaze steadily. "Because I want to. Because you deserve it. Because Sophie deserves a mother who doesn't have to work herself to exhaustion just to survive." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "And because I've gotten used to having you both in my life. I don't want that to end just because Sophie is getting better." Building something real, Claire took the job. Over the next 6 months, she threw herself into the work with passion and purpose. She helped coordinate care for dozens of families, negotiated with hospitals, organized fundraisers, and became the heart of the Hart Foundation's family support program. Sophie thrived. Her recovery exceeded every expectation. She started kindergarten in January, made friends, joined a ballet class, and lived with the boundless energy of a healthy child. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous, and through it all, Vincent was there. Not as a distant benefactor, but as a constant presence in their lives. He attended Sophie's ballet recitals and school programs. He joined them for weekend trips to the aquarium and the science museum. He became part of their small family in ways that felt both natural and profound. The first time Vincent kissed Claire, it was in his office late one evening after everyone else had gone home. She had been showing him photos from a successful fundraiser when their eyes met, and suddenly the air between them was electric with possibility. "I've wanted to do this for months," Vincent whispered against her lips. "What took you so long?" Claire whispered back. And then they were both laughing and kissing and holding each other like two people who had finally found their way home. A promise. Written in truth. 6 months after Sophie's surgery, on a warm spring evening in May, Vincent took Claire and Sophie to Franklin Park. They walked through the butterfly garden, Sophie running ahead with delight as colorful wings fluttered around her healthy, happy face. When they reached a quiet bench surrounded by flowers, Vincent knelt down in front of Claire. From his pocket, he pulled out a small box and a folded piece of paper. "Claire Morgan, 6 months ago, you wrote a note asking for help. You were desperate and scared and alone. Today, I want to give you a different note. One that's not about desperation, but about promise." He handed her the paper. With trembling hands, Claire unfolded it. Written in Vincent's neat handwriting were the words, "I will always tell you the truth. I love you. I love Sophie. I want to spend the rest of my life loving you both. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Claire's face as she looked from the note to Vincent's hopeful, vulnerable expression. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As Vincent slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, Sophie ran back to them, her face bright with joy. "Are you going to be my daddy now?" she asked Vincent with the direct honesty of a child. Vincent picked her up, holding her close. "If you'll have me, I would be honored to be your daddy." Sophie threw her arms around his neck. "I love you, Daddy Vincent." And in that moment, surrounded by butterflies and spring flowers, three broken people who had found each other in the darkest of times became a family built on love, truth, and the kind of second chances that change everything.